Welcome everyone to today's important webinar. We're going to talk about tools and tips to manage passwords. This is really important content. The great majority of compromises that take place that cause serious security problems begin with hacked passwords. So this is really important, and it's really an impossible problem for virtually all of us unless you use a password manager. So today, our goal is to educate and inform. No products to sell, simply what kind of recommendations might we offer that will help you, and you're welcome to pass this on to others, whether family members or staff, because we all need information about how to make our passwords more secure. So our quick agenda: why does password security demand our attention? And it does. We'll talk about password guidelines, what I believe is a really useful idea that will help if you have problems remembering passwords, and 3 practical alternatives to a password manager. So I want to say, I recommend everyone uses a password manager. I use a password manager. However, I know that getting from here to there is difficult for a lot of people. So what are some alternatives that really work? And then we'll look at quickly the setup of a password manager. I use LastPass. I don't particularly believe that LastPass is the best and the only password manager to use, and you'll hear me say pick one and use it. We'll go through what does it look like to set up a password manager, and then we'll talk just briefly about public Wi-Fi. So thank you again for joining. For those of you who are long-term clients, your partnership is much appreciated. For those of you, and there are many of you, who are new to PBSI with this webinar, just a short piece of information. We provide technology services and security services for clients in healthcare, business, nonprofit. We support hundreds of clients in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. And as CEO, you've heard me say this before if you've attended other webinars, but I am blessed to lead an organization where we have just a ton of people who have been with us for a long, long time. 75% of our staff have been with us 10 years or more, and I know that knowledge helps clients. It's from the knowledge that we gain every day that we accumulate information to pass on in webinars like this. So we do proactive security monitoring. And today we're going to communicate about passwords. So we all know why are you attending this webinar? You have a problem with passwords. We all do. So why are passwords so important, password management so important? 58% of reported attacks, 58% of organizations in the last year have reported attacks of some kind. And you see a lot of this in the news, and we see a lot more in the security press that we pay attention to. Malware is transforming faster than anyone can keep up with. Estimated 350,000 new variations every day. This is because there are 0-day attacks or 0 days that the attack morphs with every attack. A lot of these attacks use as the starting point compromised passwords that are easily available for hundreds of pennies on the dollar. And there are 1.2 billion exposed combinations of email address and password out there. And it likely includes everyone who's listening to this webinar. You didn't do anything wrong to have your password exposed. And we'll do a free search for anyone who wishes, for your organization or individually. Just send us an email. We'll check to make sure to let you know what compromises are out there. But what happens is we store our email address and password on any site who we trust, and then that site gets hacked. So Cisco, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Yahoo, Gmail, Facebook was recently hacked. This is just an ongoing issue, and it will not stop. And every time a site is hacked, the compromised information, including email and password, is passed on, and at some point in time shows up for sale on the dark web. These numbers will just get bigger. So it is safe to assume that each of us have at least one, and it may not be true. We've checked many where there's no compromise out there, but I know personally I have tons of compromises out there. Well, not tons. You can't prevent it. What you have to do then in response is understand what is the implication of having an exposed password out there. What does it mean to my security? And so today we're going to talk about why. What do we do about it? Multi-layered security has to include, if you're responsible for security in an organization, you really need to communicate to staff the information we're going to talk about today, they need to understand the importance of changing their password. So I'm going to do a short query here, and I'm going to go through a process where intentionally I didn't log in advance to this site. And you're going to see, we're going to talk about passwords. I'm going to show you how I use my LastPass password manager to log into a secure site and how I use two-factor authentication. So because I use LastPass, when I need to log into this secure site, it prompts me for information here, and I tell it, okay, this is what I want to use, and I want to use LastPass, my password manager, and I'm going to bring up my password manager where I logged in, and it supplies my login and password. I'm going to clear this and go to LastPass, and you can see LastPass signs me in, and now I need my two-factor authentication. So we have this set up as well. You'll be happy to know that this is set up when you see the kind of information that I have access to with this. So I'm going to enter in my code from my phone. And now I'm logged into this site. So the purpose of the demonstration and LastPass asks me if I want to add this site. Well, I've already added this site, so I'm not going to add it again. The purpose of this query is to identify that there are exposed passwords out there. So you can see here, the number of compromised credentials that are out there are just huge. They grow all the time. And I'm going to do a query exposing compromised passwords from PBSI. I'm not going to expose any of your passwords. In fact, the passwords don't get exposed when we do this query, but I'm doing this search now, and it says there are 96 exposed credentials. And that means from real PBSI email addresses. So here's somebody who hasn't worked at PBSI for years, but still their password was put up for sale pretty recently, because it doesn't matter when the password exposure happens. The password exposure may have happened a decade ago, and it ended up getting put for sale recently. So here's one where there's me, there's other people. These are real people at PBSI, and they're exposed passwords. And what you'll see is either a real password or a password that's been cracked. So the point is of that demonstration, very simply, that there are exposed passwords out there. And if you have one of those or more than one that are out there, and you've reused that someplace else, then you're at risk, because the bad guys have access to that list, and they can try and log into every bank, every credit card company, every 401k plan in the world, and try that combination. And if it's a match, then that's really important. Well, they also try it with email. And so our companies and our company emails get compromised because of non-unique passwords. So I'm going to talk about password guidelines. So that's a problem that needs to be solved. Key principles: don't reuse the same password on multiple sites. I know this is very difficult, but normal passwords create a big security problem. So we're going to talk about how do you solve that. So there are a bunch of exposures out there. If you've used a normal password in the past, recommendation, change it. One reason for using a password manager is it can assist with changing passwords on a bunch of different sites and help automate that process of changing passwords. Another key: don't store important passwords on your web browser. You know, when you're on your phone with whether it's iOS or whether it's Android or whether it's on a PC or a Mac, your browser, whether it's Safari or Chrome or Edge, it offers to store passwords, and it makes it really easy, and it's very convenient. A lot of people do it. However, here's the problem. When you save passwords on a web browser, it's great because now you log in on different devices that you use the same browser, say Chrome, on different devices. It remembers the password. Well, that's great, except for anyone who gets control over one of those devices has all your passwords automatically, which is very dangerous. So if you've stored your 401k password in your browser, if somebody gets a hold of your PC, which can happen in a number of different ways, they don't need to guess. They just log straight into your 401k plan and So storing on browser, if the site is not critical to you, fine, it's convenient, do it. But critical sites, I simply wouldn't do it. The difference between a password manager and storing passwords on your browser is that using a password manager requires a separate login password or two-factor authentication. So just having access to my PC doesn't give somebody access to my passwords. Okay, password management principles. Enable two-factor authentication every place you can. And this is becoming part of life for all of us. It's really important. And for everybody listening, we strongly recommend you have this on your email. If PBSI supports your email, connect with us. If you're not already using two-factor authentication, it's important. This makes sure that if somebody gets your email, gets hold of it, they can't use it unless they also have your phone. Okay, simple thing, password security. Don't store written passwords where anybody can access them around your desk or in your drawer. This is pretty basic, and frankly, the majority risk today doesn't come from people who have physical access to your desk. It comes from people who have electronic access. So don't use work email address for personal accounts and vice versa. This simply increases the risk if we're using a shared password. If we get a home site compromised, now all of a sudden we compromise our work site as well because we've used the same email address. So simply make sure your staff has separated and don't use their work email address for personal accounts. If you want to find out if you have compromised passwords out there, just ask us. We can do a dark web search. Most important recommendation, use a password manager. And there are a lot of good ones. I'll talk about LastPass today. I've used LastPass. I've used Dashlane, which is excellent. There are other good ones. So use a password manager. However, for those who say, I don't know how to go about that, I just simply, I'm going to resist that. This screen, and there's a handout, by the way, that's available to everybody who attends. You can download the handout at any time. We'll also send you a link to it. This screen contains some information that might allow you to create a password remembering system. So here's the idea. Choose a normal password in your mind, but never use it and never store it. Just remember it. So I'm going to use an example here. Let's say I decide that I'm going to use my normal 9 password is mytext1234, all lowercase 1234. Okay, I can remember that, mytext1234. So when I'm going to create a list that I might store in a less secure site, as long as I never expose what mytext1234 really is for me. So I'm going to go through an example here. So and I'll go through other examples using the same idea. So if I were going to use this in my password list, I would say, okay, this website name using this email address, my password is going to be normal9 except cap third, which would mean cap the third letter, capitalized. So that would mean if I say normal9 cap third, this would be the password. If I want to replace the numbers, I'd say normal9. I would store this information, and the password would actually be normal9, but change the numbers. If I say cap second 6643, that means capitalize the second letter and replace the numbers with this. And so if you remember, whatever you choose your normal9 to be, or normal 8 or your normal 10 or whatever, remember that, but don't ever store it or record it. You'll see how I'll use this in upcoming examples. So this is an idea that might practically allow you to store passwords in an insecure location where you're not really compromising the passwords. So now I'm going to move on and talk about 3 places where you might consider storing information other than a password manager. Remember, I'm saying use a password manager. It's the most secure, it's the most straightforward. However, and I know from questions that came up pre-webinar that some people use some of these methods. So I'm going to talk about use an encrypted document with Word or Excel. Now, this would simply mean you put your password list in Word or Excel, but remember, I'm never going to put my real passwords there. I'm going to say normal9 cap third or something like that in Word or Excel. I'm going to go through an example. I'm going to demonstrate using a Word document. I'm going to demonstrate using OneNote. I'm going to demonstrate using Outlook contacts. So these are 3 alternative methods where I might consider storing passwords. The universal thing that is true of these is that each of these are accessible wherever I am, presuming you're going to use the cloud to store your Word or Excel document. And that's kind of the thing is when do we need a password? Well, we never know in advance. So are we going to be home? Are we going to be in a store? Are we going to be on vacation? So I want to store my passwords in a place that's universally available. And that's true with the password manager. So if I'm going to do an encrypted document, this is how I might go about it. So I'm using Windows Explorer on my PC, and I have a cloud drive where I don't really use this. This is a demonstration example, but in my home documents, I have this file called fake passwords for demonstration. So I'm not using this, but I store this here. So wherever I am, I can access this in my OneDrive on my phone or on my PC. And I've encrypted this document with a password. So that's kind of important. And I'm not using a terribly complex password to open this because I want to make it simple to open. But the reason that my password doesn't have to be complex is because I'm not storing any real passwords here. So here's my example. And again, this isn't real. It's an example, but I have these in alphabetic order: Amazon, Amex, Apple, and so forth. What email address did I associate? And what is my password? So here I'm saying normal 9 plus add these characters. Here I'm saying normal 9, but replace the numbers with this and add double asterisk on the end. Here I'm saying capitalize the first letter, replace the numbers with this, and add these 2 characters. So in other words, you can have any number of variations on your normal 9 password, and you're not ever storing in this document what normal 9 really is. Somebody couldn't have this document and know what your password is for anything. So this is one idea, and if you want to know how to encrypt a Word or Excel file, it's very simple to do. It's in the file save as process, and we have a solutions document. You can ask us, happy to send it to you to make sure you know how to encrypt a document. So that idea simply used a document that I store that's available from wherever I am on my OneDrive. So next example, I'm going to use OneNote. I use OneNote all the time. It's a great business tool, and if you use OneNote, then this will be a very practical idea for you. If you don't use OneNote, then using OneNote just for this purpose might be more than you want. So I'm going to go again to my PC, and I have my OneNote running, and so we have different shared dashboards that we use for OneNote. So there are a bunch of shared links we use here. But I'm going to go to my personal OneNote where I have my to-do list, and I have a tab called Encrypted Tab. And this, in fact, is my passwords. Now, they aren't really my passwords. Again, it's just for demonstration. But Encrypted Tab, I might name passwords. And it says enter here to unlock it. So I'm pressing the enter key. And again, I'm going to enter my simple password. And now you see that here are the passwords. So it's just an alternative place to store the same information that I had in my Word document. Down here below is a picture of my phone. So if I opened up OneNote on my iPhone and keyed in my unlock password, then my same password would be synchronized. So if I make a change on my PC, it shows up on my phone. If I, any device where I have OneNote connected, one change, one place, synchronizes across all devices. That's kind of the common theme of these 3 options is whether it's a Word document, Excel document, a OneNote tab, and I'm going to go through one other. It's the same principle that I'm going to choose a storage place that I have universal access to. So another place some people use is Outlook contact notes. Again, I would not use Outlook contacts for actually storing passwords. It's just not secure. Again, anybody who has access to your PC has access to your email. So Outlook contact, how would that work? So I'm going to go to my Outlook. I'm going to go to my contacts. And again, I don't really use this. But so here are my contacts. I'm going to search for a contact I've stored called John Doe. And searching for John Doe. Here I find John Doe. When I open up John Doe, here's my list. So I'm storing the same information in an Outlook contact. I wouldn't use a family member. I wouldn't use somebody that's easy to look up because what you're trying to do is store this information in a place where nobody would ever think to look for it if they did have access to your PC. So 3 alternative methods of storing information, and all of them are really only secure if you don't actually store passwords there. You store information about how you can know what the password is. Okay, alternative options. Hope that's helpful. Because in all of this, the presumption is for all of us today, handwritten passwords are just impossible. And we find some people still say, I have a book, I write them in a book. Well, that's actually secure, but it's not very portable or practical. Okay, password manager. Why would I use a password manager? How would I do this? I'm going to go through a short demonstration of setup. The LastPass, which is what I use. Again, I used to use Dashlane. I liked Dashlane, a little more expensive. I felt like LastPass was more pervasively used in the marketplace, so I switched some years ago. There are other good ones. I'm not saying use LastPass. I'm saying choose a password manager. But the similarity in all the good password managers, one, passwords are encrypted at a very high level, and most of them never store that encrypted password on your device at all. It's always in the cloud, and they don't have access to it. So if they were, if LastPass or one of these other sites were hacked, the hackers can't get to the passwords that are out there because the employees of LastPass can't get to them, or Dashlane. So high-level encryption is a commonality, and the other key is auto-synchronization across all devices. So once I have a LastPass account or whatever other manager, I can get to it from my PC, my laptop, my Mac, my Android, iPhone, iPad, and the way this works is one time, one place, you set up an account, and then once you have your account set up, then you download the app on each of those devices and sign into the same account. You're not creating separate accounts on each of these. So as soon as I have an account set up, then when I install LastPass on my laptop, boom, all my passwords are there. And the same thing, and if I make a change on my iPhone to a password, it's automatically synchronized across these other devices. So another benefit is autofill of passwords, which you just saw me demonstrate, which sometimes works perfectly conveniently, and sometimes, as you saw in my case, I had to make a couple of keystroke clicks in order for it to fill in the password for me. So there are versions of most of these password managers. It used to be that LastPass Free was a very legitimate alternative. Unfortunately, it no longer is because they made a change just recently where now it's the free version is only available on one platform. So you can't synchronize across Apple devices and Windows devices, for example. So its usefulness is limited. Still, $3 a month for the premium version, well worth it. There are 2 legitimate options, $3 a month for premium or $4 a month. If you have a family, for $1 a month more, you actually get 6 separate premium accounts for $1 a month more. So if you're using LastPass, and I do this, I have a family's account, and I've invited each of my kids to have their own account. We're not sharing passwords with each other, although we could, but they have their own account. It's simply provided because we have I have a family's account. Okay, so I'm going to go through an example of how this would work. In the setup process, having done this with a couple of different password managers, it's similar. So you'd get started by going to the vendor site. So you'd go to LastPass.com. I would not recommend searching for LastPass and then clicking on a site that's not LastPass.com. One, because the bad guys will use, if you choose to buy it from another vendor site, they may be doing something more than you want when you're registering through a different site. I'd go straight to LastPass. The other reason is you get your best discounts. They'll offer a 2-year term or 3-year term where the prices are far lower, and you'll get that on the vendor site. So you go to LastPass.com, download the app, and here's the starting point. We identify, okay, here's my email address. That's the first thing we do to create an account. And then I'm going to create a master password and confirm it and I can give myself a note. So in this case, I could say normal 9, blah, blah, blah. So I could give myself a note again that nobody else would know about. Then once I've created my master password, there's an option to add a browser extension. And I'd recommend you do this for every browser you use. So when you say add browser extension, that simply means now if you use Chrome, for example, every place where you use Chrome, LastPass is already there, and there's some integration that takes place. Then there's another option that you will absolutely want, and that's import. So when you choose your browser extension, it will go here automatically, but you can also import from other places. And here is an example where there are passwords out there for these are the password sites, the password's not exposed, but you can say import, and now automatically all of the passwords that you'd previously saved on your browser, you can now import, and then you can choose the option to delete them from your browser. So you've solved the insecure use of the browser storage, and you've put them into your password manager all in one fell swoop. So once you've done that, then you're going to set up a two-factor authentication device. So you're going to put in a phone number, you're going to send and it tests your two-factor authentication, and absolutely I would do that, particularly with a password manager. It's your most secure set of information. You want to make sure that you are the only person who can access it. So once you've done this, you have a bunch of sites that have been imported, and LastPass adds the icon for the site. So you know when there's a site that's legitimate, and if there's not a icon there, then the connection might not have been made completely. Then you can add your own. So here in LastPass, there's a plus button. When you click on that, you can add the site that you want to add, put in your username, your password, and save it. And now it will be added to this list. So you can add additional sites. And it's also true that if you're using a browser, if you go to that site, so you log on to Amazon, you haven't previously created your account, you can click, or LastPass will offer, do you want to add this site? And clicking yes automatically stores your password there. So it's fairly straightforward. So summarizing that setup: initial setup, auto import your passwords. When it's asked on each device, do you want to remember me? Yes, that means remember my email address, so you don't have to tell it that every time. But very important, when it offers to remember your password for your password manager, no, no, no. If you store your password manager password on any one of your devices, it's no better than your web browser. It's available to anybody who has access to your device. So related to this, I wouldn't make your password to your password manager as difficult as I would other devices, because remember, you're going to need this password when you log in on your phone. So is uppercase more difficult? Just make your password such in recognition that you're going to need to use it a lot of times. So don't make it something you can never remember or you have to look up, and don't make it too long or complex. So long passwords are important. I'm simply saying the practical reality of using a password manager. Consider that. Set multi-factor authentication, set your email address, a secondary email address. So if you have a work and a home email, here's one case where if you're doing this for your home email, you might put your work email on there. What you're trying to do is prevent, if you're ever locked out of your primary email, that there is another way for you to get to your password manager. And with LastPass, I'm sure others do the same thing. You can set a contingency contact and an access delay. So my wife has immediate access to LastPass, but if I had not logged in, you can set it to 30 days or 60 days. So if my LastPass account hadn't been used in that period of time, then if I had an attorney, I mean, whoever it is who I'm saying is trusted, I don't want all my passwords to be lost forever, you can set one or more contingency contacts. And if it's an attorney or somebody, they can't get to it till 30 days or 60 days or whatever you set after you've last used your account. So you're not really providing access, you're just providing access in the event of a disaster. Synchronization is automatic. Okay, we're almost finished with content. One last comment: changing subjects, public Wi-Fi. hopefully everybody knows public Wi-Fi is not secure. And what does that mean? That means on any public Wi-Fi, Starbucks, any hotel, any airline, somebody can be listening and watching, not listening, watching every single keystroke, including your logins and passwords, without you knowing about it. And they can do it in a backpack. Sitting in a Starbucks, you would never know somebody's watching or listening. They could be sitting in a car outside of the Starbucks, and anything you key in, they can capture. So this is not rocket science, and it's not expensive for them to do that. So just simply, you can't securely use public Wi-Fi. So recommendation is, if you're on public Wi-Fi, don't log into anything that requires you to enter a password. So public Wi-Fi is not secure. What are the options? One, you can use a VPN. So a virtual private network encrypts the point where you are through another site, but basically it creates a secure tunnel from you to the place you're logging in, and it prevents anyone from listening to the traffic. The real practical alternatives: one, cellular is always safe. If you're on your phone, simply don't use Wi-Fi. Turn your Wi-Fi off. Cellular traffic is always encrypted. So if you're in a public place, use cellular. That's really the simplest solution, and it's universally safe. You can do Google searches on public Wi-Fi, but stop if you're prompted for a password. So either cellular or use a VPN. So there is lots of different VPNs are fine. If you'd like a link to this slide deck, just let us know and we'll send it to you. But this is a link to some vetted VPN sites. I use NordVPN. It's $59 a year, and I don't use it very frequently. And the reason I don't use it very frequently is because my habit is, when I'm in a public place, I just use cellular. So anyway, there's some options. So just know to stay away from public Wi-Fi. This is a picture of my iPhone screen when my VPN is turned on and when it's not turned on. So if, when you're on your phone, you simply click NordVPN in my case, and then it shows now you're protected. So any place you go now is protected by VPN and you're safe. So you either see it or you don't. And this is from the manufacturer Apple. So you can use a VPN. So we're finished with content today. I hope this has been helpful to everybody. A summary of what we've talked about. If you have a normal password that you've used, change it every place, particularly on important sites. Don't reuse work passwords on personal sites and vice versa. Use a password manager, enable two-factor authentication whenever it's available. And if you want to know if your passwords have been compromised, just let us know. We'll do a free check for you. And on public Wi-Fi is not secure. Use cellular or a VPN. So that is all of our content today. I want to thank you for your attendance. You know that there's a free download that's available to you with a summary of what this webinar has covered today. And we're finished today. I'm going to stop recording, and thank you for your attendance.